Welcome to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, grief and soul purpose coach and fellow griever, Tara Accardo. Hello. Welcome back to the Life with Grief podcast. I'm your host, Tara Accardo, and I have been wanting to cover this particular topic for a long time now. It's actually kind of embarrassing that I have had this podcast for about 2 years now, which is crazy. And I've never covered this topic in a solo episode, like in this much detail. It's kind of unacceptable, actually. I say that kind of jokingly, but truly, like for me as a griever, a fellow griever, it's one of what I would consider like one of my three biggest losses. It's my big three, right? I lost my mom, I lost my dad, and I lost my sweet 19-year-old dog Princess back in 2021, less than a year after my parents died. And listen, of course, my parents' deaths were devastating, but I can't express how difficult in a different way it was to lose my dog, to lose Princess. And if you're listening to this, you can probably empathize with this feeling no matter what pet you have lost. If it is a dog, a cat, a bird, a pig, a cow, I don't know. I know there's a lot of listeners here that come from different walks of life and different backgrounds. And listen, pet loss deserves to be acknowledged and validated. So that's exactly what I want to do here today. I want to talk about how to cope with pet loss. And I want to normalize and validate pet loss and the grief that we can experience around pet loss. Because the deaths of these little souls of our loved ones, right? I consider them a loved one, as one might consider a human. They're profound and they're deep. And there's so many different reasons that we might really deeply mourn a pet. And that deserves to be acknowledged and talked about today. And I know there are a lot of listeners here that maybe in addition to losing a loved one, you've also lost a beloved pet along the way. So I want to just start with a really soft little just grounding breath here. So to drop into this episode, just go ahead and take a deep breath with me. Maybe close your eyes as I am doing right now if you're watching the video version of this. Put your hand on your heart for a moment. And let's just take a breath and just kind of honor our little furry friends for a moment. As I hear the birds chirping outside of my window, perfect day to have this conversation today. I don't know if you can hear that through the mic here, but just take a couple of big deep breaths here. And when you exhale, really make sure you are getting all of that oxygen out of your lungs. And when you breathe in, really making sure you're filling them up. And just kind of calm ourselves a little bit. And this is a great practice to do every day, even if you haven't lost someone, right? Just to kind of get us grounded in the present moment. But listen, whether your loss was days ago or decades ago, this episode, and really every episode here on the podcast, is here to just wrap your heart in some warmth, like a warm blanket, and just let you know that you are so seen here as you're grieving, as you continue to navigate life with grief. And I want to kick this episode off by saying that pet loss is a form of disenfranchised grief. And there is an entire episode on disenfranchised grief, by the way. And of course, as I'm saying that, I cannot remember what number episode that was. I'll look it up. I'll try and remember to put it in the show notes. But many grievers feel that they shouldn't be so devastated over the loss of an animal for a variety of reasons, right? I think first and foremost, it's just by so many other people's accounts, right? It's just an animal. How could that possibly compare to a person, right? But grief doesn't operate by logic. It operates through our bonds. And when that bond is deep, so is the grief. The problem is our cultures, especially, I don't even want to single out any particular culture. I think just depending on the culture, let's just put it that way, right? I want to generalize here. It doesn't always give that kind of grief the space and the love and the compassion that it deserves. So I want to just validate the complexity of pet loss and this type of grief. You might be feeling sadness, anger, guilt, confusion, emptiness, loneliness, and sometimes all at once, right? It's not like we feel just one of these things and that's it and whatever. Just like if you were to lose a person, this is an ever evolving process. And that's not only valid, it's normal. These companions of ours, they weren't just pets, quote unquote. They were daily presences, emotional support, bringers of joy, and sometimes even our reason to keep going. That was definitely the case for me when my parents died, and Princess was the only kind of quote person I had left that was really close to me. Like, of course, I had friends, I had family, but in my immediate circle, in my world, someone, in this case, my dog being the thing that lived with me, she was my rock. She was really what I had to cling on to when everything else around me felt like it was just absolutely falling apart. And these types of losses, especially with pets, it changes our routine. The silence in our home that we might experience, unless you have like a cat or something that's like really, really quiet. But all jokes aside, the quietness, the empty bed, maybe, you just don't hear the paw steps down the hall, or you don't have the feeding bowls to fill, right? The point here is it's a sensory loss and a spiritual one. So let's just talk about why pet loss can hurt so much. So I kind of just went over some, but I think these are all things that are really important to acknowledge because it helps us understand why this type of grief and this particular loss can be so devastating and hang around a long time, like longer than people understand and realize. And I think when we can acknowledge like, oh, this is what's happening. Oh yeah, that's why this is affecting me so much, we can have greater patience and grace and compassion with ourselves or with other people that might be going through a pet loss too, right? So, first, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the unconditional, uncomplicated love that pets give us. So often, pets give us love with no strings attached, right? They don't care if we're in pajamas, if we cried all day, or if we, did poorly on a work call or bombed an exam at school or something. I don't know, I'm just throwing things out there. But it's just, they provide this emotional safety. And sometimes for some of us, that emotional safety is rare, and losing it is really profound. Another thing is they are just the ultimate non-judgmental companions most of the time, right? Sometimes we might judge that like a cat or a dog or something is like judging us, but generally speaking, they don't interrupt, right? They don't try and fix it. They sit with us in our sadness, in our joy, in our anxiety. They witness us, often in ways that humans just don't or don't know how to show up for us so much. Also, like I mentioned, our routine is often woven with their presence. So, again, if you're ever kind of struggling with like God, why am I feeling this loss so deeply? Think about how many touch points of your day included them, right? Morning wake ups, walks, feeding times, maybe some couch cuddles, car rides, maybe a little bit of a bedtime routine. All of that is completely shattered and rocked when we lose them. And that absence creates a ripple effect that can be felt throughout our entire day. They also show up for us when others, frankly, don't, or maybe don't in the way that we would have hoped. When we're grieving, maybe we went through a divorce, maybe we're depressed, if we're isolated, our pets are there. That's not something you just get over, right? Pets are literally, seriously, you guys, I've seen this. Pets are literally sometimes more supportive and pivotal and important to us than some of the people that we have around us. They are our best friends. They complete our family. That was definitely the case for us. We always joked that Princess was the sister that I never had. And they can just be this incredible touchstone of, like I was saying earlier, comfort and safety and much needed security that we need. They also have this really beautiful power of reflecting our emotional states back to us. So sometimes our pets are mirrors of how we felt or how we're feeling, right? They kind of feel like little extensions of ourselves, especially those of us that have like a really deep, profound bond with these pets. Losing them can feel like we are losing a part of our identity or our emotional self, right? And as I also alluded to earlier, they bring such healing, nervous system regulation and peace and calm into our lives when we need it the most. And one of the things that's always so incredible to me about our pets is how so many of them can pick up on our emotions and how we're feeling. And even this just popped into my head. I've seen like reels or TikToks or videos or whatever of like, if there's just a little trigger warning, I'm going to mention pregnancy. If there's, maybe a pregnant woman or something and the dog or the cat or whatever, like, puts its head on her belly and, has this soulful connection to the mom and to the baby. And it's just insane, honestly, to me in the best, most beautiful way. The care and the compassion that these beautiful little souls and our pets can give us. And they can just sense things so far beyond what what humans can. I believe that. And I think they do have other senses, honestly, that we just don't have. So they're just so special. And if we go through something difficult in our life and we really need like a sturdy, steadfast companion by our side, perhaps one that can't talk back like some humans do, pets just have this beautiful, selfless way of being there for us. And our happiest moments, our saddest moments are just regular day to day moments with such innocence and dedication and loyalty and love that is just so unconditional. We might not even feel like we deserve it some of the times. And there, you know, I think where so many of us get, me especially, I'll just speak for myself really quick, get hung up on losing our pets and things that we might feel around that is they're just these sweet little beings that just don't deserve anything bad to happen to them. Not that humans do. I don't want to like get that confused. But I don't know, there's just something about our pets and just their innocence, right? In a lot of cases and things that we just oh god, it's just gut-wrenching thinking about them being hurt or in pain or leaving us. It's awful. And I feel like I have to say this, even though we go into getting a pet knowing that it's highly likely that we are going to outlive them, it's not like that makes it any easier when they die, right? Especially if the death was at all traumatic or sort of, how do I say this? Wasn't supposed to happen in a way, or it maybe happened in a way that didn't feel, very dignified, or it was kind of unfair in some capacity. That just makes it worse. And that was, definitely the case for me. I've talked about how I lost my dog on the podcast before, and I actually kind of have really mixed feelings and I kind of hate telling the story. But the long and short of it is, like I said, she was 19, so she wasn't a spring chicken by any means, but she was doing well. She had, some arthritis and she was moving a little slower than she used to, but she was still pretty sprightly and everything. And she had had some seizures here and there in the last several years of her life, but nothing consistent, nothing horribly alarming. And basically in my case what happened, and I'm telling this story not to make this about me, but it's going to kind of segue into my next point because I think a lot of you maybe in your own way can relate to my story. Basically, in order to get some of her medications that she needed from the vet, I had booked an appointment to do that, but they were like, we need to give her a rabies shot. She's overdue for a rabies shot. And I kind of pushed back, honestly. I was like, you guys, she's 19. I don't really feel like she needs a rabies shot. Like, this can't be necessary, blah, 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 blah. So the long and short of it is I went against my better judgment and I caved. And because they were just so insistent, and they almost felt like they were kind of holding the meds like against me, like until I got that shot, they almost like weren't going to give me the medication she needed, type of thing, which felt very slimy and gross to me. But anyway, gave her that rabies shot. That was probably on like a Wednesday or Thursday. Within 15, 20 minutes of them giving her that, she had a seizure, and then had another seizure, and like another seizure. And I honestly, you guys, I'm like graying out that whole time, and like how many seizures she had exactly, or what all happened. But I can't remember if it was that night or the night after, but essentially she just kept having seizures. It kept getting worse. Took her to an emergency like vet clinic. I think they kind of got her stabilized and we sort of figured things out, but like basically she just never came back after that. The seizures kept coming. I remember this was probably Thursday or Friday at this point. She was like walking around our house, very uncomfortable, wouldn't really eat. She was like panting like crazy. Mind you, this was, I should mention, by the way, the reason I am even coming out with this episode right now is because her little angelversary, the day that I lost her, as of the day that this recording is being launched, which is on a Thursday, that was yesterday, was the 4-year anniversary of losing her. So that was another reason I wanted to put this episode out there now. Anyway, so, it was June, it was hot. So I was like, oh, is it just because it's too hot in our house or whatever? And I was just trying to get her comfortable, right? So I thought things were looking better. We're going to be okay. But then that night, yeah, I'm realizing this was on a Friday now, because this was a Thursday night. Sorry. She died on a Friday. So that night took her back to that same emergency vet clinic because she really wasn't doing well. I sat with her in the back seat. She just wasn't herself. I'll spare details. Very lethargic, just not in a good way. And she basically, it looked like was having like little mini seizures. You know what I mean? Like the big ones had kind of gone and come, and just little ones now. And so we brought her back to that clinic. And mind you, COVID this was 2021. So COVID was not at its height per se, but it was still kind of around, and it was just like a whole thing. So we had to bring her in, but then like go out and like wait in the parking lot a little bit. And I remember them coming back out after looking at her, and they were like, there's like nothing we can do. Like I think we would recommend putting her down. And this was my now husband, then boyfriend at the time. And, I just wailed. Like I just started crying. I was like, oh God, no, like, please no. Sorry, guys. I knew I was going to get emotional. I can like talk about my parents and their deaths better now than I even can, like, princess. Because again, this is what I was saying. It's the innocence, right? Like this poor little thing. And then I felt so much guilt. And this is where I'm going to get to next with all of this. I just felt so much guilt over getting that stupid vaccination that I didn't believe in. And I didn't think she should be getting at 19. And I was worried about this. Like there was just something in my gut. And I'll tell you guys right now, I have talked about this in other episodes, but I've never gone against my gut like that again. This was such a lesson in listening to myself and knowing what was best. And I, to this day, like I've processed a lot of that. I've I haven't like moved past it, but I've like forgiven myself essentially, right? For like doing what I thought was best at the time. I was trying to be a good dog mom. You know what I mean? And I think so many of us in these positions, we're doing the best we can. We don't know. We trust the doctors, right? We trust the vets. This goes for people too. We trust professionals. We trust what we think is okay at the time. And then well, you don't really know. You don't know what you don't know, right? It's like a motto on this podcast. Like we're just hanging in there doing the best we can. So anyway, I got that news and we go in and, just hold her for a while until, it was time. The other thing I want to mention, and I almost am a little uncomfortable mentioning this. I hate admitting this, but I could not be in the room with her when they did it. And I regret that now because I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else and all of this. And there was such a big part of me that felt that way too. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be anywhere else other than with my baby. But I was like, and this is what I keep coming back to, at least in my situation and in my story. I had already watched two parents die. I was there when witnessing one. I literally witnessed one of them die. And then my dad, I got there minutes after, and there was a lot of trauma around seeing him post death. And I was like, I can't watch them essentially take my dog's life, even though I know she's not coming back from this, even though I know it's what's best. Like, I can't sit here and witness this. So that's hard to admit, but I want to admit that because if anybody here has ever been in that situation too, and you couldn't be in the room watching it, like, please know that you're not alone and it's okay, because that's very difficult. And it's like you want to be there with them, but it seems selfish, and maybe it is at the time. I guess everyone might have their opinion on that, but I don't know. In my case, I couldn't do it. I was like, you know what? I already just lost two parents. Okay. I can't watch a third family member. And she was so out of it anyway. And that's what I tell myself to make myself feel better. I was like, she wouldn't know that you're not there, even though she might have. I don't know. Anyway, I've lived with that for a long time. I lived with that guilt. I lived with the guilt of, having them give her that shot. You should have heard me on the phone with the vet. I'm pretty sure I threatened to sue him for like malpractice. And I was like, you should have known, and that this was going to happen to her. And I just wanted anyone to blame. But I think I was the most mad at myself because I felt like I allowed that to happen, but I didn't know she was going to have that reaction. So all of that to say, if you are struggling with this in any particular way, like, again, like I was saying earlier, please know that like so often you're hanging by a thread. You're doing the best you can. You might be operating out of some fear or just, whatever. And it's okay. And so, like I've been saying, to kind of segue to my next point is that, there can be a lot of guilt, or if like euthanasia is involved. And I think this is a tough decision because that decision can often feel like we're playing God with their life, right? But I just want to remind you that in a lot of cases, it's really an act of love. You ended their pain, not their story. And you chose or are choosing compassion over prolonged suffering. And in many cases, we're doing, like I said, the absolute best that we can. We don't want our loved ones, dog, cat, human, or otherwise, to suffer, right? So, in cases like this, a couple things that I've tried to do other than just telling myself you were doing your best, you were doing what you thought was right, is saying what you need to say now. You can still talk to them. They're still around. I believe that. And you can apologize, and you can thank them for the gift of their presence in your life. You can say goodbye. You can say, I love you, right? There's no expiration date on that love or that bond or that communication. I certainly don't feel that way. And just a little affirmation for you here as a listener is, whatever the situation is, and you can take this literally or just kind of a little more metaphorically, right? Like you stayed, you showed up, you gave them peace, you knew that they were safe even at the end. And even if the end doesn't seem to involve any of that, or you just have totally different feelings on how things went, please know that you gave them such a beautiful life, if nothing else. And just like our loved ones are not the sums of how they died, neither of were our pets, right? There's so much more than that. And their lives were so much more than that too, right? So you didn't fail them. You are not failing them. You loved them all the way through and through, and you still do. And the way that they died cannot take away from that. It just can't. So, one thing I also just wanted to mention here is the question of getting another pet. And I bring this up because this has actually come up several times in my time as a grief coach and just, frankly, seeing a lot of this stuff online. You might feel a pressure to replace your pet, or you might feel guilty for even thinking about getting another one. I have known people that have done this, that have gotten another one because they felt that they needed it either soon after or, wait a little while and then get one. There might be a lot of mixed feelings on this. I guess where I stand on it, and this why I share these thoughts is, again, just take this with a grain of salt or, just to validate any thoughts you might be having about maybe getting one. Getting another pet, another animal, it doesn't dishonor your loss or, the little pet that you have lost. If anything, I think it honors your capacity to love, right? To be able to expand your heart past the loss in a way, and not past it in a bad way. I don't mean it like that, but just, to lose such a beloved pet and then be able to have, the love and the bravery and all of that to bring in another one, like, good on you. That's incredible. That said, you don't have to rush it either. I think a lot of people are so sad and so like, that they just, want to kind of, for lack of a better term, replace the pet sooner than later. But like, sit with it, sit with that grief, right? And this is a perfect example of going with your gut. If the idea of getting another animal brings more anxiety than peace, it's okay to wait. When the time is right, you will know. And it won't be because you've moved on, right? That's not the point. The point's not to just fix it and put a Band-Aid on it. It'll be because that love still lives in you and there's space for more and you have a little more to give. And that's a beautiful gift to any little creature out there that needs a good home. So again, it's all about just like taking those breaths and getting in touch with yourself, and being ready when you know that you're ready. That said, I also want to talk about how do I put this? Kind of the weirdness of grieving a pet and how to talk about it. And I first want to start this off with, again, coming back to guilt here a little bit, this guilt spiral. Whether it was perhaps an accident that befell your little furry friend or a health issue or whatever transpired that resulted in losing them, you might ask yourself these questions, right? Like, was it the right time to let them go? Did I miss something? Could I have done more? Like all of those classic, what if sentiments can just hit us over and over and over, like the grief waves that we are unfortunately so very used to. And one thing I want to mention here is in a lot of ways, guilt is grief's shadow, you know? But guilt doesn't always mean you did something wrong. Let's reframe that a little bit. It often means that you cared really deeply. And let me tell you, again, I just went over that whole story, so I won't get into it again, but like that guilt is something that I know all too well in my case. It's something I've dealt with for a long, long, long time. Frankly, I hated myself For how I handled it, I felt like I contributed to killing my dog, if I'm being really honest. And that has been and was awful and horrible to have to cope with. Like, never experienced anything like that before in my life. And if you're listening to this episode, I just want to like say to you, you might feel like you have to hide your pain and your grief, especially if people around you don't understand it. And maybe it's been weeks or years and you still cry when you see a photo of them or hear their name, human or person. That's not a weakness. This is so corny, but I'm just going to say it. It is a testament to the depth of your love. And so to bring it back to the guilt, you wouldn't be feeling guilt over something that you didn't feel bad about, that you didn't love so deeply. So don't question that. I almost want to say don't read too much into it and like what the why behind it. Sometimes there's no why. There's no reason that things happen the way that they do. Sure, maybe it was to teach us something if you want to take away a lesson from it, but sometimes it is just the circumstances of the situation. And that's where forgiveness has to come in. That's where we have to be open to having compassion for ourselves and the situation and the circumstances and all the things. And again, I would be remiss if I didn't mention here, because these comments that I'm about to mention, can make our grieving experience and process exponentially worse. If we were to hear these from others, for example, someone saying, it was just a dog, move on, you can get another cat. Again, insert your animal here. At least they lived a long life. Hate that one. They're not a person. They're just an animal. It's time to move on, time to move forward. Like their life somehow meant less than a human's does. I don't know. I always find that one so strange. But if you're an animal lover and you've had a pet and they're beloved to you and you've lost them, you know that that is just not the case, right? They're everything to us, right? They light us up. They absolutely make our life. So all of those things, they might come from well-meaning places, maybe even some judgment in some cases. I'm not going to lie. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. Some people are very judgy, but either way, they can land like emotional punches to the gut, and they can minimize something that is so sacred and special to us. So I think this is just a really good opportunity, if we feel comfortable enough to do so, to give language to use with other people so they can just start to understand the importance of this connection, right? So maybe we say something very gently and calmly, like, this pet, insert your pet here, was more than just an animal to me. They were my family. I'm grieving them the same way I would grieve any other deep bond. I love you, but I don't need advice. I just need space to feel what I'm feeling. And, again, you can lose the I love you. You can wordsmith that however you want. But I think having these really gentle ways of kind of reframing it with people and not coming at it from like a way of like, well, let me teach you a lesson here on what it really is like to lose a pet. We don't have to be cocky or condescending about it, but just really approaching it from a place of love and like, no, I'm actually really trying to share my heart with you. Here's how I really feel, right? So that all being said, I'm just going to give you a few ways here that are both soulful and practical ways to cope with pet loss, how we can honor them, memorialize them a little bit, and just carry them with us throughout our lives. Number one is creating kind of a sacred goodbye, right? So even if you didn't get one at the time, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe it is a literal burial, right? Maybe you weren't with them, for example, again, just using my situation, when they were, put down. But you have a little ceremony for them later on when you feel like you can handle it and you're in a better headspace. So whether that is actually burying them or maybe you have their ashes, which is my case, and you just have a little, coming together of either just you or people that loved that little pet, whatever they were. And, maybe you share stories, you light a candle, you all just kind of sit in your feels and cry or whatever. We sometimes those rituals and those sacred goodbyes, as I refer to them as, can be not completely healing, but certainly a little step in the healing process. It just allows us to say goodbye to them in a way that feels organic and is just special and is a way that feels a little bit more fitting for them and their memory. Or maybe you watch videos of them or something, or like I said, share stories or special memories. And maybe you actually end up laughing amidst your tears too, right? Like doing something like that might make you feel so much better than just like harping on the way that they died, if that is, a struggle for you, which totally understandable if so. Another thing, and I'm going to list out a bunch here, but creating like an item in memorial of them or kind of in their honor. So one thing, I'm so glad I have this now, but oh my God, when they offered this to me, I was like, Jesus Christ. My dog is like dying in my arms, and you're asking me if I want a effing ornament of my dog's paw print. They seriously did that. They literally, I'm not joking. I was like holding Princess. She's not doing well at this point, but I had to fill out some like paperwork and things like that. And they were like, we offer this little ornament if you want. Like basically they took her paw print and then they like got it made into this ornament. And I was like, oh my God, your guys is like, I get it because it's like, they have to know those things ahead of time. But I was like, Jesus Christ, this bedside manner. Anyway, they did it as nicely as they could. But frankly, in the moment, I was like, really? But looking back on it now, I'm so happy I have this ornament, you guys. It's this adorable round little ornament. It says princess on it. It might say her birthday or, her birth and death date. I can't remember, but it has her paw print on it. And I'm so glad I have it because it's like my little last thing of her. But, shops on like Etsy and places around, have great options for things like that. So, whether it's an ornament, if you celebrate Christmas or anything that would require an ornament, a place to hold photos of them, a memory box or a book or, just other keepsakes, right? 4 years later, you guys, I still have her bed, her brush that I brush her fur with, and her leash. They're in a storage unit, but I still have them. I don't have the heart to get rid of them yet. I just don't. And I don't know if I ever will. That's okay. I'm kind of just going with it. This whole process is just such a testament to doing things in your own time. But I just wanted to throw that out there because if you ever happen to think you're like weird for holding on to something or that it's wrong or whatever, like I just want to validate you. Like I said, I held on to a lot of things of my parents for a very long time. I still do. And things of princesses as well. And I don't want us to feel any shame around that. Possibly some custom art is also another cool one. So again, John, my now husband, was boyfriend at the time. I can't even tell you guys where he got this from me. And I should have a picture. I don't know what I'm doing, but I wish I could show you guys. Maybe I'll try and post this if I can find a picture of it. He got me this like abstract kind of like portrait of her, has like her name on it. And again, I think he probably got it from Etsy or something like that, but it was just the cutest little memorial for her. We had it hanging in our house, and it was just this adorable little photo of her that someone kind of like drew and was all artsy about it. And it was so sweet. So maybe it's something like that. Like I said, maybe it's watching home videos or movies with them in it. Maybe it's having, like a really special urn or a box with their ashes. That's what we have for her. It's this beautiful little wood box. Maybe a memorial garden or a plant within a small garden or a yard rock or like a yard ornament of some kind. You could plant a tree or a bush or a flower or something in their honor. I've also seen wind chimes or stained glass I keep bringing up Etsy, but Etsy's got a lot of good memorial things on there. So one of those, or like a candle with their photo or their name, a little keychain. I think my mother-in-law actually got me a keychain with princess on it, but it's so cute. Literally have it on my house keys to this day. Jewelry with, maybe a little bit of their ashes or a paw print or maybe even one of those photo projection bracelets or necklaces where you can like, hold it up to the light a little bit and like see their photo through it. I have one of those of my mom and I that I was gifted, and it's so sweet and special. And you could just kind of look at it, and wear it on you anytime that you just want to, see their face or need a little reminder. So, whatever it is you choose to do to honor them, to memorialize them, whenever you choose to do it, it does not have to be immediately after the death. If it's too painful, just don't go there. Revisit it later. I've always said that. Either way, rituals and any of the above that I just mentioned, or, anything else you choose to do, it's just a beautiful way to have kind of just this container for release of emotions and grief. And it's also a container for this practice of honoring them. And this truly is grief integration in action. I think that's the best part of it. It's incorporating their memory and everything they brought to our life into our world now, taking away little lessons and things that they taught us and things we would do again, things we wouldn't do again, all of these things. And it really is such a gift that they give to us. And it really is such a gift that they leave us with. Last couple of things here I just wanted to mention, I just gave a bunch of like kind of more tangible things that you could create or do for them, but also look, I mentioned journaling a lot, but honestly, like if you are really ruminating on a lot of thoughts and you need to kind of just get things out a little bit, write to your pet. This is not weird. I know write to your pet. What? Like they can't even talk. No. Like again, this is the connection. This is the spirit of them that we're getting in touch with. You can ask them questions, tell them what you miss, reflect on what they taught you. How did they change your life? So you might use a prompt like, one of my favorite memories of you is ... And you never know what you might be able to remember by journaling some of those things. Again, I got Princess when I was 10 years old. That's on the younger side, right? So I don't necessarily remember all of my memory. I mean, we never really remember every single memory, right? But the beauty of journaling is that it could evoke more memories and more thoughts and things. So this goes with, human loved ones too. And I know because I am 5 years out from losing my entire immediate family, that it can be really scary, the idea of potentially losing those memories and things. I feel that a lot. I feel a lot of pressure to be the one to like have to remember my parents and keep their memory alive and make sure my daughter knows who they were and all of that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is kind of all on me. So again, writing things out, you never know what that could jog for you. Another prompt could be, I feel most connected to you when ... Or the thing I'm struggling with most since you've been gone is ... And I love journaling because it just creates this energetic dialogue between you and whoever you are trying to kind of communicate with. And it gives your pain somewhere to go, right? Putting that pen to paper and that energetic kind of exchange is really powerful, more powerful than you might think it is. So just putting that out there, give it some thought. And also, of course, talking to people who get it. So find or maybe even create pet loss grief groups. There are definitely some out there. I know that, but you can look locally, you can look online, reach out to friends, who have also lost a pet and are maybe grieving them. If for nothing else, just to be able to say, like, this sucks, but I get it. And I understand that sadness and I'm not here to fix it. I can't make it better, but I see you. That's it, right? On the other side of that coin, maybe just gently avoiding those who minimize this particular loss. This is sacred grief, pet loss, and not everyone will get it. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Again, people might view pets differently. The list goes on. Hopefully, today's episode maybe sheds some light on that a little bit. But you know what? That's okay. We can't force anyone to feel some type of way, to understand it in the way we do. And frankly, no one's going to understand any of our losses, of course, the way that we will, but, certainly not that of a pet. And if there is someone in your life that you can't exactly cut out, but you're kind of like, oh my God, like you're really pushing some boundaries here, you could even share the sentiment of, or something like this, I don't need to be fixed or cheered up. I just want to be seen and remembered in this pain. And I just want a little space to be able to miss them. That's all, right? So, last one here, and this is going to be a little more on my woo woo side, but spiritually connect if that resonates with you. Talk to your pet out loud. If they have a grave or burial site of some kind, visit that. Or, maybe you kind of just like go to or sit in the place that they used to nap if you can manage that, which I know can be very emotional. But this has happened to me, and I also wanted to mention this. A lot of grievers report dreams or signs or, symbols or feeling their pet's presence in some way. So whether it's energy, whether it's a memory, whether it's just this divine love that surpasses all space and time, we can still have a relationship with them in a new way. And I don't say that to minimize anything. It's never going to make up for them not being here in person. It's just not. But that is the essence of life with grief, right, guys? It's okay. What do we do now? How do we move forward and acknowledge and honor this relationship in a new way that I've never had to before? So, just to start wrapping this episode up, I just want to say aloud and validate the fact that pets are so special because, well, for so many reasons, but they teach us being present fully in the moment. They bring and teach us joy, loyalty, playfulness, forgiveness. There's so many qualities that pets and the act of owning a pet can bring to our lives. And they give all of that to us. But I say that because, again, I just want to validate that, like, that reason alone and so many other reasons can be the reason that pet loss is so difficult to cope with and is so devastating. And, it's funny. I was actually joined by Christine Passo, who's an amazing grief coach. She's just such a beautiful woman and soul. This is episode 93 with her. And we talked about a lot of other different like losses and things that she had gone through in her life. But the main reason she actually came on the podcast was to talk about her dog that had passed, Maya Ray. I will never forget her now. And she was like, Tara, this loss is like the most devastating I've ever been through. And she's lost people, you guys. Like she had been through a lot. If you haven't listened to that episode, please go do it because she's just fantastic. But and it's had one hell of a story. But I've had multiple guests on the podcast that have talked about pet loss. And I think that's why this episode has been so long coming, because we've talked about it here and there. But it's just a testament to the fact that pet loss affects so many of us. And it truly can be in the top most heartbreaking, gut-wrenching experiences that we can go through in our life. And so I just want to say to you, if you are listening and you are experiencing the loss of a pet that is perhaps, you know, on their way to the rainbow bridge, as they say, or has died, and you are coping with that loss and with that death, I see you so deeply, so wholeheartedly, and I just invite you to use this opportunity to ask yourself, what lessons did your pet teach you about being human? I think that's such an awesome question to ask ourselves. And I think the answer might be a lot more eye opening than you might expect. So, seriously, journal on that or just, ponder that. What lessons did your pet teach you about being human? And reflect on how your pet lives on through you in your tenderness, perhaps, and how you love others and show up for them, and how you show up for yourself and your grief, and how you can be a more compassionate human through, just this undying love and compassion that they gave to you. Pets really can teach us so much. It never ceases to amaze me. All right, my friend, if you have made it to the end of this episode, perhaps with some tears in your eyes like I did, or hopefully a little bit of a weight lifted from your chest, I want you to know, as always, you are not alone. And whatever animal this was for you, whatever form they took on, it is such a beautiful and selfless thing that you loved and continue to love them so selflessly, because it is a very selfless thing to love an animal in that way and care for them and bring them into your family and make them such a part of your life. Again, knowing that in many cases there's a chance that we'll outlive them. It's a very brave and amazing thing that you are doing or did as a pet owner. So give yourself a pat on the back today, okay? If this episode resonated with you, I would so appreciate it if you shared this episode or any of the episodes here on this podcast with someone who is also grieving, perhaps a beloved pet as well. And let's just normalize talking about this type of loss and shout it from the rooftops, because our pets, they deserve it, right? So, if you want to explore this grief more deeply with someone who gets it, please remember that I'm here, whether it is through one-on-one coaching or any of the other resources that can be found on my website. You don't have to carry this alone, and I'm here for you. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in the next episode. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps you are taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog, more coping tools, ways to work with me, and so much more. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains, and on Instagram and TikTok at Life with Grief Podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your stories, and supporting you however I can. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and share this episode or this podcast with someone who could use it too. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.